Well, good evening, and once again, welcome to the LBJ grasslands. It may be a little bit difficult to tell, but I'm standing at approximately the same place I was when I started the primitive land nav exercise about 2.5 weeks ago. Now, I had speculated about coming out here and doing the same exercise at night so I could contrast day and night nav techniques and show you just how different the exact same territory looks in a bright sunshiny day versus night. Now, I'll give you the URL to that video and suggest you spend some time with it because it will be a great contrast, but tonight's exercise is going to be a little bit more involved. Now, each of these exercises has constraints and a scenario, and for the primitive land nav operation, my constraints were I was a first-time visitor to the grasslands, never been out here before. I had no map, no compass, no GPS, no rotting material. So for example, if I saw a blue or an orange or even a yellow marker right there, okay, I've never been out here before. I don't know what that means. I did not have any prior knowledge or even a map where I could put that into context. Tonight will be different. I'm allowed to take advantage of all prior expertise and experience with the grasslands because this is not a land nav exercise. This is a search and rescue training op. So I think this will be interesting because it will give me a chance to put together a lot of different things and show you, for example, how primitive land nav, lighting systems, I use a lot of different lights, how night vision, thermal technology, search tactics, psychology of lost people, all these things come together in sort of one package. But before we do that, we need a scenario. And tonight's scenario, and I'm going to go ahead and get started for initial orientation. I'm using, of course, our friendly neighborhood comm towers. I can't get the North Star just yet, so I'm going to use the moon. I know that our intended direction is that way. I wanted to start while there was still some light because there's some stuff I want to show you when we get to our first waypoint. Now, tonight's scenario is 3 guys, longtime friends. They're all avid backpackers, campers. They got together at Tadra today. As I've mentioned before, Tadra stands for Texas Arabian Distance Racing Association. That is a campground and a trailhead for all of the named trails out here. And it's, I don't know, roughly that way. They got together. They had one of those maps that you can print out about the grasslands, kind of a 50,000 foot view. I've often joked that those kind of maps have just enough detail to get you in trouble, but they don't have enough detail to get you out of trouble. So the plan was to come up here, camp at the Piney Woods campgrounds. You know, they followed the yellow trail out, and then they would hike back next day. Well, one of the hikers, we'll call him Alan, really adventurous, decided he wanted a little bit more. He was looking at his map. He saw Valley View, told his friends he was going to go try to do an out and back to Valley View. Said he would be back well before nighttime. Well, it's almost the end of civil twilight. This is long past well before nighttime. So we're going to head out to Valley View. The reason I'm starting here is that he may have actually gone well down the yellow trail before realizing that he needed to come across these gates just to get to the shortcut trail. So he may have in fact gotten in trouble on his way out to Valley View. That's why I'm starting here. So let's go get that first waypoint in our previous video, which marks the beginning of the shortcut trail, and I'll check back in then. Okay, well, here we are. The reason I wanted to do this while there was still some light out is that everything here is still fairly visible. You can even make out, remember the pond from the previous video? You know, here we are near the end of civil twilight, and all of this is visible. Notice that it's been this ground has been chewed up heavily from horse traffic, maybe even some deer, possibly some hog tracks there, don't know. I'd have to look at those in a little more detail. So the previous markings we left are not here. And the way that we marked this waypoint before is not going to be adequate, because while there may be good light now, we come back down this path hours from now, it's going to be dark. You're not going to be able to see any of this detail. So the first thing I'm going to do is mark this using chem lights. Now, of course, I expect to come back this way and retrieve my chem lights. I'm using the cylindrical bottom and the relatively rounded point as kind of an arrow. So I came in this way, and then I'm going to leave another chem light here. Hopefully you can see both of these on the GoPro. That's the way I came in. That's the way I'm headed out towards Valley View. And again, I want you to contrast what this looks like now at the end of civil twilight to what it's going to look back when we come back later. So I'm going to get going here, and then once it gets darker, I'll check in and start talking about some of the lighting systems I use. Okay, I'm roughly 220 yards out. I don't know if you can see it, but right here, there's kind of a mowed path. Maybe that's a little bit easier to see. There's some element of grooming there, and it heads off that way. I actually think it goes back off to the right over there, but that's just speculation. Maybe goes around what appears to be a pond in the background. So I typically take time, you know, to search around these areas, because somebody could have gotten kind of vectored off in this way. You know, you've got to think our friend Alan may have got started way later than he thought in actually finding this this shortcut trail that we're on. And you know, sometimes if you're moving fast, you're looking around, you get a little disoriented. Oh, this is going way off too far to the east or something. You know, they may take a path like this. So I'm going to detour off and probably go back around behind that pond, then come back here and resume our path. Now for orientation, I'm going to be using the moon. So when I'm coming back, you know, this is only going to be a few minutes. I want to keep the moon in a certain orientation on the way back until I intersect this trail, and then I can use pace count for additional detail. So I'll check back in once it gets a bit more dark. Okay, we're out about 500 yards from the last waypoint. This is in the approximate vicinity that I stopped and kind of showed you what the territory looked on that previous video. Now I don't have any supplemental illumination on right now, so here we are. I mean, literally at the dead end of civil twilight, so you can kind of compare to what things are starting to look like. Now my headlamp, which is my primary navigational tool, is a Petzl Swift RL. I'll be running that on medium reactive mode most of the night. And since I'm out searching in pretty much wide open territory, I mean, I'm not going to be going through much in the way of tree canopies. Everything is going to be kind of wide open like this. I'm pretty heavily loaded on spots as opposed to floods. So my number one big gun here on my left shoulder, which is permanently attached to my ruck, is a Fenix TK 22 UE. This is a fairly amazing spot. On a perfectly clear night, you can illuminate out to a quarter mile, maybe even just a little beyond. I know the GoPro isn't doing justice, but even kind of looking back into the remnants of the setting sun, I can get detail about trees, you know, literally to the end of my line of sight. So, like I said, this is the big gun, 1600 lumens, but 1600 very well focused lumens. Now, my go-to light, if I don't want to throw out that far, I want to get just a little bit more peripheral illumination. This is an old school Powertac. I think it's an E5. I've had this light for 5 years. It's a very good long throw light. Well, you'll notice, compared to that Fenix, it's giving me a lot more peripheral illumination. Not nearly as much throw, but a lot more peripheral. And so these things are set up right on my head and shoulder for very fast access. So this is what I'll be using for searches during the night. You'll notice our comm towers over here. I've already got a good orientation by lining up the distance between top and bottom flashing lights with my thumbnail, distance in terms of number of knuckles across, index finger. That was back from my initial orientation when I came through the gates. Now, I don't know if you can see it, but there are additional comm towers off this way. And when I came out here during the day, because of glare from the sun, they're very hard to see. So once again, you know, you really have to have your head on a continuous swivel when you're out searching like this, particularly looking behind you. You know, you want to make sure that there are no eyes staring back at you. This is the time of the evening where our nocturnal animals like to come out. But the thing I like about using these natural nav techniques is that it allows me to move fast. Now, I still haven't picked up the North Star, but relative to the moon, I know I'm moving in approximately the correct direction. So between the moon, the North Star, and the comm towers, I'll have pretty much everything I need to make very fast and rapid moves through territory. All right, well, here we are, got the headlamp on. It's medium reactive. I hope this shows up okay on the GoPro. We've got some trees coming up. This will probably be kind of the closest to a tree canopy that I'm going to get the entire night. Now, periodically, of course, I would stop. I would blow my hyper whistle. That also helps fend animals off. That's a very intense and almost painful sound to pretty much any animal. It lets the person that I'm searching for know that I'm out there. Now, this is kind of intriguing. We've got kind of a rabbit trail here. I'm going to ignore this for now, just because if Alan came this way, even if it was much later than he had originally anticipated, he'd probably be hurrying to try to get out to Valley View. And so I would wait till I get out to a little bit more open area, do a more long throw, quick search while I'm heading out to Valley View, but really stay on that whistle. And of course, be yelling his name. In addition to a physical description, we know that he's an avid hiker. He's got that map. We don't know if he has a compass. We know for sure he does not have GPS. Now, I've already done the preliminaries, of course. I've driven up to Valley View, checked the roads on the way in case he, you know, got disoriented, made it out to a road. He's not on the roads. There was only one camper up at Valley View. I would have, of course, interviewed that person, see if he saw him. Now, look, here's another one of these mowed, kind of a maintenance area. That looks like it almost goes just right out to a pond. I think the U.S. Forest Service, who maintains the grasslands, cuts these periodically for maintenance. I don't think he would have gone out there, but I'm going to walk out there anyway. That's just a quick out and back. Pretty close to being able to pick up the North Star. In fact, I think I've almost got it. I'm going to double check that pretty soon. Of course, I teach night hiking and night operations courses. Just check my website. I'll give you that URL later. And we'll go into celestial navigation, so forth, in great detail. I don't know if you can see it. We've got Saturn way out there back towards the south. So a lot of things that we can use tonight. So my headlamp is still in medium reactive. It's kind of hard to get any detail. I got a really wide open area. This is where it's really good to get this Fenix out. And I can give all of this wide open territory here kind of the once over. Kind of unlikely this early in the outbound. Oh, there's our infamous wooden monolith. Okay, so I know what's coming up pretty soon. Yeah, it's kind of hard to expect somebody to, just kind of wander out in this area, at least on the outbound. I'll show you how we might search this area in more detail on the return. That's one way I would use just this Fenix spot to do a quick sweep. Now, another option, if I want good throw, but I still want more peripheral illumination, is I'll get this OLight Seeker. And this is 3200 lumens. It's got a very good throw, not as good as that Fenix, but you notice I get more peripheral. And so if I want, long throw, but a better mix between downrange and peripheral illumination, this is the one I'll use. You'll notice it's almost impossible to pick up that wooden structure that I've just been jokingly calling the wooden monolith, but we saw it pretty easily on the Fenix, although I don't know if any of that came out on the GoPro. Okay, so here we are at an intersection. Actually, the blue and orange share a common path, go around up like that, eventually touch the edge of Valley View, then head back on that way. There's kind of a fire break out beyond that, but most of that's wide open territory. I wouldn't view this as something I would search, at least not right now. Again, very likely, it's looking like now he probably made it to Valley View and got in trouble on the way back. And of course, the trails continue to share a common path off here, and then they'll branch with the blue trail heading up to the Tawdra Gates, and the orange eventually heading you kind of in the general vicinity until you southwest until you get to the Tawdra Gates. But we're going to go ahead and continue on into Valley View, double check the situation there. But my supposition is now, since there's no sign, no indication that he did not get lost on the outbound path, it was probably the return. That's the working presumption, so I'll save most of my intense searching for the return, and I'll show you what I mean by that and how he probably got in trouble once we get there. So we are headed into Valley View. I don't know if you can see the reflection there. That's from the gate, and I can actually hear something up here, so there may be even more campers. I'm going to go check in. Yeah, I don't know if you can see. Let me get the Fenix out. Yeah, there's the restroom and the windmill. So I'm going to go up here, take a 5-minute break, interview any campers who may arrive, and see if there's any more information we can pick up on Alan. After that, on the way back, I'll show you how I think he got in trouble and how we're going to adjust our search strategy. All right, so I took a brief break. No update on Alan, wasn't seen here. So I'm headed back out of Valley View. Before I start, what I'm going to use for just rapid orientation, the moon is so bright tonight. If you know what the moon's position is like every hour through the evening, it's so bright and so easy to pick up. Why not, use it? Especially since it's so bright, it will obscure a lot of stars that you might otherwise use for orientation. We have our comm towers, and then I've got, I don't know if it shows up on the GoPro, but a very bright Saturn. And again, in night courses, I'll go through how all of this works in detail. So let's get started out of Valley View. I'm going to have to modify. My initial presumption was that Alan spent way too much time finding where that shortcut trail began. I still believe that to be true, but he did manage to make it to Valley View. The problem is he was probably dressed for the day, and it got up to about, 69, maybe possibly 70 out here. So you can be dressed for the day, but when I started, it was 54 degrees and falling. So hypothermia can become an issue. That sun starts going down, and then you come to something like this. And if you saw the other video, this is that infamous fork. Okay, which way do I go? All that we know is they had a map. Map isn't going to show this fork. It isn't going to help you. In fact, what's really bad is if you set a waypoint way back where we started, GPS may actually kind of point out in this way. I've seen really strange things like that. So the natural tendency, especially since he's going to be kind of in panic mode now, he's going to want to get back as quickly as possible. Most people will actually think that I walked straight into Valley View. I need to walk straight out. That's actually not correct, although it's probably the easiest decision to make. So I'm now going to presume that he got in trouble by going, and he thought he was doing an out and back, and he was actually doing the loop that we attempted to do during the primitive land nav exercise. So I'm going to now head this way, and I'm going to have to really ratchet up the search techniques and we're really going to have to move fast because, of course, injury, hypothermia, all these things come into play. So do you remember this from the previous video? This is that first branch off. Actually, there's another one back here. You can't see it. This is where a person could get kind of really in the first stages of panic and disorientation. Maybe I'm not going the right way. And you see this little turnout. Of course, our speculation from last time, which we now know to be true since we can use local knowledge, is that this actually cuts through. This path right here will actually take us right back to where we came in. So I'm going to invest some time in searching around through here in the thinking that, he probably doesn't have much light, or he has a cell phone light. And as the light, around here goes down, that's really bad news for this wide open territory. So it's quite possible to try to move through stuff like this, and it's real easy to trip. Injury risk goes up exponentially without the proper lighting. So I'm going to do a basic walk through until I get to a high point. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the grooming of this path. I'm going to use the comm towers. I'm going to use the tree line here as kind of a handrail. And then I'm going to do one more thing that I'm going to show you. That is, I'm going to take a chem light out. Let's get one of these that has a lanyard already on it. Well, if you don't have a lanyard, it's always good to carry one with you. A little hard to get off the wrist, but I can take this, run it through. Just want it to hang up good there. And I can take this chem light hang it right there on the tree. Now, as long as I keep that chem light in sight, I can make it back and I can see my fork here. So I'm going to do a rapid visual search first, and then I'm going to bring thermal into play. So I've gotten off the trail and kind of out into the bush. We can bring, any number of lights through here. And part of the problem with this kind of brush standing up like this is that if a person gets really disoriented and they just kind of start wandering, they can collapse out somewhere in that brush, and I'll put a light right across them and never see them. So I'm going to do a quick thermal scan. My go-to thermal device here is the Pulsar Axion XM-38. So I'm going to get that set up and do a quick sweep, and then we'll head back to where we were. Well, there's nothing out here. You can see that some of the trees still have some heat left from earlier in the day. There was one point there where the microbolometer paused. It does auto recalibrate. Pulsar is a pretty amazing device. Of course, at 5.5x mag, you have to be a little concerned about wobble. And one of the things you can do is you can put your hand across like this and balance your elbow to make kind of a stand. You can use your walking stick if it holds up. Those are some things, but you know, you're still going to get a bit of wobble, but it's great for doing a quick scan, just seeing if something hot may be kind of lying there in the kind of this brush that I missed. So we're going to go back up here, pick up our chem light, and continue heading out in this direction and see if we can pick up sign that our person went out that way. Well, I can tell just from the planets ahead of me, I'm definitely moving more and more southwest. I don't know if you can pick it up on the GoPro, but it would be a pretty amazing night for observation. It wasn't for the fact that the moon was out and so bright. Notice we got a lot of wide open territory here. Good place to bring that Fenix into play and do a quick scan. Also, what I'm looking for is there any sign here that any of this brush is broken. You know, did somebody just stumble out there? And sometimes, you know, that will happen. A person gets disoriented, maybe even a bit dehydrated. You know, it was dark enough that they needed light. The only thing they had was a cell phone on them, and you know, stuff like that happens. You'll be surprised where you find lost people a lot. There's a little break up here. Let's go check this out. Okay, see, that's nothing. There's just no sign that any of that is bent. Don't see anything off in the distance, so I'm going to continue ahead as planned. Okay, I don't know if you remember this from the previous video. This is that kind of groomed mode area that I pointed out was either a maintenance or a shortcut trail that has been put in by the U.S. Forest Service. This is not part of the named trail system. This is the continuance of the orange trail. There's the orange marker that I alluded to on the prior video. So again, this is something, you know, imagine somebody searching, you know, they're just barely looking down at the ground with a cell phone. It's quite possible that they could wander off in this direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop a chem light and orient it in the way that I was headed. And I'm going to use this for a rapid search. I'm going to go out a few hundred yards in this direction, do a targeted search, and then work my way back and use rapid pace count and this chem light as markers in addition to my planetary orientation. So let's see if he went this way. So this is interesting, a little over 150 yards. That's the direction we were headed. There's another one of these that goes out here. Notice that most of this is either mowed grass or it's very hard dirt. And it's been chewed up by horses. The soft dirt shows no sign whatsoever. So I'm kind of thinking this may be a dead end. I mean, that continues kind of going out in the direction. I think I'm going to give it another 50 yards And if I don't see anything, I'm going to turn back and pick up the orange trail, and we'll stick with the original plan. All right, can you see it up ahead? I'm going to go back here, retrieve my chem light. Just in case I got confused, I'm using the fat to narrow end as an arrow, so this indicates direction of travel. And of course, I'm now perfectly aligned with my planetary marker that I was using, so it's time to pick up the path and go on. Okay, this is another area where people can get in trouble. We have this downslope here. Looks like it leads through a gully. We've been moving not quite due west. We're going to turn around here, move back east and southwest. Blah, blah. You remember all that from the previous video. This is where people can get in trouble, though. This is where I'd really be looking for sign. When you're going down or up an incline, you want to leave your feet more turned to the side. You don't want to walk straight up and down. So you notice I'm just kind of hard to see my feet, but I'm moving more to the side as I go down here. And if you're doing this in a low light situation, look at all these uneven areas, you know, this, and you get these rocks down here. That's serious fall risk. And so these are areas that I might, you know, expect to find a person got into serious trouble, especially if they're moving on no or very little light. So this is a little further than when I stopped last time. I just checked the North Star and the moon. Definitely confident I'm heading predominantly southwest. I think I was able to verify that from the wind direction and angle of my shadow last time. A little bit different at night. And you notice it looks like, I can't tell if you can see it here, there just looks like some slight braking out there. So I'm going to stop, bring the big gun in, see if I can pick up anything on the Fenix. You know, that could have just been, you know, a hog that waddled around there. I don't see any brakes right in there. So, nothing out here. Speaking of hogs, you got to watch these little places right here, this water. So I'm constantly blowing my hyper whistle, 130 decibels. Let them know you're out here, and they'll 99.999% of the time they'll move away. If they don't, then I'm afraid I may have to bring Mr. 10mm into play, but let's hope that never happens. So I wanted to show you this area real briefly. One of the few tree canopies we'll walk through tonight. This is probably the most dense one. There's a pond right here. Don't know if you can see it. But other than this, it's pretty much wide open for this entire route. So I don't know if you can see in the distance, those are the Tadra gates. Very unlikely he would have picked this up. So I'm going to do two things, a quick visual scan, and since there's so much wide open territory, I'm going to follow up with another thermal. I mean, I don't want to go all the way over there and search around the road and everything, and you know, unless I've got a thermal trace or something to work on. Very likely this is somebody coming through here in a low light situation would have seen that. So I don't know if you remember, this is another one of these branch points. I've laid a chem light down here in my general direction of travel. I'm thinking that maybe Alan, since he had a map, has been trying to follow the blue markers. So I'm going to go diverge off here for a while and see if I can pick up some sign. If not, I'm just going to backtrack to this point, and the chem light is there as an additional help to pick up my path in. Okay, we got lucky. For purposes of this exercise, yeah, we were right. Alan just got exhausted. He was laying over here at this intersection of the blue and orange. He just succumbed to a little bit of hypothermia, exhaustion, some dehydration, but other than that, it's okay. So fast forward 30, 45 minutes, Mylar blanket, hydration, some food, he's up and ready to move. And so now we have to navigate our way back out of here. First thing we're doing is going to go back and retrieve that chem light. Don't know if you can see it up ahead. I put the Swift RL into high reactive mode. You see anything reflecting up there? Recognize anything here? Yeah, there's the two chem lights I laid down. So this was my direction in, that was my direction out. Otherwise, you know, you could walk right by this, especially if you were on lower light. You might miss this fork. Just kind of keep walking in that direction, just circle right back around to Valley View. So let's pick these up and we'll head on in. We successfully found our person. He's with us. That's how these training scenarios work. So hopefully you got a chance to see just some of the techniques that I use during night SAR ops. Natural land navigation is so helpful because it allows me to move quick. I have other lights, of course, in addition to what I showed you tonight. I've got strobe lights, Goal Zero, mini lantern. All of these things have their uses. I may do videos on those later. In the meantime, we're headed back to the truck, and the truck means coffee time. All right, well, there's the truck. The night is over, just got to make it through the gate. Again, another exercise just like we did last time. No map, no compass, no GPS, rapid move through territory. I showed you some of the lighting systems that I use tonight, a little bit about night vision. I have about half a dozen different night vision devices I use, and there may be opportunities for more videos in there. But since we made it back to the truck, I've already said what's coming next, so this is my final sign off, and thank you.